Hello and welcome. I'm Rob Adler-Pecker. I'm the Executive Director of Yiddishkayt, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you viewing at home to this conversation with Frank London and Aaron Paley, a part of our conversation, a series of our conversations with innovators in Jewish culture in celebration of our 25th anniversary. For the last 25 years, Yiddishkayt has explored how the culture of Eastern European Jews fits into the vibrant landscape of Los Angeles. And more broadly, we've examined the wonder and occasional messiness that occurs when multiple cultures come together and begin to interweave. We've used Yiddish as a touch point to demonstrate the dynamic and reciprocal relationship between different cultures by organizing and offering a wide variety of programs, including music events, artist residencies, festivals, workshops, film series, and much, much more. Yiddish is an excellent example of what linguists call a fusion language. It formed as a result of a variety of different cultures and borders and languages, Slavic languages, Romance languages, Turkic and Semitic languages, all joining together in a way that defies our modern understanding of nation states and languages. And when Aaron Paley launched Yiddishkayt back in 1995, it began as a cultural festival to celebrate this fusion aspect of Yiddish. Yiddish was not to be presented as something nostalgic or sentimental or a repository of funny-sounding words. It was something that reflected dynamism, creativity, and complexity that stepped out of culturally specific spaces and looked outward to the world at large. Well, the original Yiddishkayt festivals were distinct from nearly everything that was happening in the Jewish cultural scene, in that Yiddishkayt looked at Yiddish not as a stereotype or a for us, by us phenomenon or a Fiddler on the Roof cliche, but from the very start, we celebrated Jewish culture's intertwined relationships with the other cultures among the myriad cultures in the city of Los Angeles and beyond, and to shed a light on the rich, humanistic, intercultural tradition and move it forward to face the struggles of today alongside other groups with histories of immigration, displacement, and marginalization. So it seems especially appropriate to begin to bring Yiddishkayt's founder in conversation this afternoon with the amazing Frank London. Because not only was Frank there when the seed of the concept of Yiddishkayt got planted at a site-specific performance piece that took them both to the Alter Heim in Ivya, Belarus, that we'll hear some more about in a little bit. But Frank's entire body of work is emblematic of everything that we aim for at Yiddishkayt. His projects transcend borders and differences to share the beauty and alchemy of people and communities, often the most marginalized or oppressed, coming together to create something new. As a young Yiddishist, I was always a fan of Frank's work, especially with the Klezmatics and his klezmer brass all-stars, but it was a concert I saw in July of 2002, which is nearly exactly, 19 years ago, that took my fandom to a whole new level. I saw Frank perform at the Tempodrome in Berlin, in a venue set in the heart of the Anhalter Bahnhof's ruins, which is a train station destroyed in the Second World War. He was performing with the incomparable Serbian Romani trumpeter Boban Markovic and his orchestra, and that incredible concert that I went to 2 nights in a row reflected everything that drew me to Yiddish culture in the first place. And there, in Berlin, in the ruins of the war, Frank creatively, vibrantly brought together the music of people, both the very targets of genocide, spearheaded from that historic capital, and created an unforgettable, truly electric celebration of creativity and mutual solidarity, a spirit that provides the auditory landscape of everything we work for at Yiddishkayt. So I'd like to get our discussion started by bringing in Aaron Paley. So you may know him as Yiddishkayt's founder and visionary. He is also the president and co-founder of Community Arts Resources, CARS, an unparalleled innovator in urban planning, cultural programming, and event production. And he's always on the forefront of connecting people and community and place. Welcome, Aaron.
Thanks, Robbie. And thank you for that brilliant introduction that really set this up so well. And I'm so excited to have this second in a series of conversations for the 25th anniversary of Yiddishkayt with Frank London, who was there when the spark for Yiddishkayt as an organization literally, actually, my wife, Judith Teidelman, calls it a big light bulb that appeared above me. And she said, I could see the light bulb when it happened. And so let's bring Frank on for an incredible conversation that we've been prepping for at least about 6 months now. And Frank, thank you so much for doing this with us today.
Oh, thanks, Aaron. It's so good to be here talking to both of you. I mean, we've known each other for, well, how long have we known each other for?
27 years this month.
So we have a lot to go through.
We have a lot to go through, and your life is absolutely amazing. And we are going to be covering it in this 90 minutes. And there's actually so much to go through that we're going to zip through the beginning of your life. But I do want to ask you, I was thinking about this when I woke up this morning. You are a composer, an arranger, a performer, a student, a teacher, a role model. How do you introduce yourself to somebody who doesn't know you? What do you say?
You want to have a drink? Yeah, I'm a musician.
You say that's good enough. And how did you start this life in music?
That's okay. I didn't know if I really wanted to, although in hindsight, obviously I did. So I out of high school, I went to your classic liberal arts college, Brown University, and I noticed that not only was I just doing nothing but playing music and taking music courses, but I also encountered the great French horn player and sort of spiritual leader, Brother Ah, also known as Robert Northern, who he was on Coltrane's Africa Brass Sessions and the first Charlie Hayden Liberation Music Orchestra, and Monk at Town Hall. And he was teaching a course at Brown called Sound Awareness. And it was essentially a course in free improvisation, group improvisation, African American music history, and listening, all rolled in one. And it just, between this and that, I said, I really have to pursue this. I have so much to learn. I didn't know anything. So I left Brown after a year and made my way to Boston and started studying and just never stopped. Still studying, still learning.
But, clearly you had started music lessons. I mean, you had started out, or you had studied music a little bit before you got to Brown, I'm assuming.
Only public school, and
Okay.
Thank God for public school music education, which should be reinstituted throughout our country. 4th grade, you learn an instrument. People get to learn music. This is part of what, not that they're all going to become professional musicians, not so clearly oriented towards a goal or a result, just because it introduces an aspect of life and history that is so essential. And many people do end up becoming musicians.
So in 4th grade, where were you? Where are you in the world?
I was in Plainview, Long Island, one of the most dull, boring suburban, like working class suburban neighborhoods ever. Long Island, a suburb of New York City. I would, of course, on the weekends, we would go visit my grandparents, Bessie and Lou, who owned a deli in Brooklyn Heights. But that was my experience from New York City was basically their delicatessen and running delivery boys and stuff like that. But I grew up on Long Island, going to shopping malls.
And anything particularly Jewish in your upbringing?
Well, let's separate Jewish, the religion, and Jewish, the culture.
Okay.
And this is very important. I mean, I always knew I am a Jew. I mean, that's not a question. And we were dead on, fully observant, 100% from Long Island. From Reform Jews. We were absolutely, we followed all the dicta of Reform Jewry as it was practiced in suburban America in the 1960s, which meant we drove to synagogue, which we called temple, on Friday night. No, we did Shabbat at home, and we would drive there on Saturday, which meant that on Passover, we ate matzah, not bread. So I ate my ham and cheese sandwich on matzah and not bread. We didn't know, the word kosher was never mentioned in our house. There was no Jewish culture.
No Jewish culture.
No Yiddishkayt. Nothing like that. What there was we were just raised to be Jews. We celebrated the holidays with our Reformed Jewish ways of doing it, which is a real thing. So my identity is totally Jewish. I barely learned Hebrew, part of the thing, and this could be the basis of another conversation. Let's come back to it in an hour. Is that in the Reformed Jewish Hebrew school, after school program, we learned as much about other religions as we learned about Judaism. They felt compelled to teach us, the whole big spectrum of Buddhism and Taoism and thisism and thatism and everything. And so very Jewish, with absolutely nothing that you would call Jewish culture. And whatever I did know about Jewish culture was actually, it led me later on to say things like Jewish aesthetics is an oxymoron or something like that, because anything that was Jewish and music or Jewish and art was pretty damn just had no heart, no substance, just horrible bourgeois arts and crafts. Later on I found out that obviously I was wrong, but growing up, so the idea that I would become involved with Jewish music didn't make any sense to me.
Wow, that's fascinating, especially since people think of you as maybe a quintessential quote-unquote Jewish musician, for better or for worse, because I know that, and we'll get into that much later. But that, so this is fascinating, and actually, we've been talking for years, and I still am finding out things about you. So you get to eventually to the, that class at Brown gets you to the New England to the New England Conservatory of Music, and then somehow you discover, how do you discover klezmer? Let's just get to that bridge.
Okay, first thing, context. So I'm in Boston at New England Conservatory. I'm studying in two departments: the Afro-American music department, which the name Afro-American should tell you that we're in the 1970s. So this is before the term became African-American. My degree is in Afro-American music performance. And there was another department there called the Third Stream Department, led by Rand Blake, which believed in two things. One, doing everything by the oral tradition, learning all music by ear. And two, in finding the intersections between crossing off borders. They were very ahead of their time. Jazz, classical music, ethnic music, whatever you call it, it was just seen as music. And so learning everything by ear, you would learn Bach by ear and find ways to improvise with it, with Mexican banda music. And so I'm exploring all these things in university and in the streets. I'll say yes to anything. So all of a sudden, from having grown up on Long Island and literally only knowing rock and roll, popular music, and really cheesy schlock that my parents played around the house, I all of a sudden was exposed to everything else all at once. I'm in a salsa band. I'm in a Balkan band. I'm playing in a Haitian band and writing arrangements. I'm playing calypso music. I'm doing free gradual process improvisation. We're doing Art Ensemble of Chicago. We're playing theater music, everything in the world. And my dictum was just say yes. They say, do you want to do? Yes, of course, I'll do it, and exploring everything. And into my life reemerges a character who was very important for many years. My old music and art camp counselor from when I was in junior high school, Hank Isnetsky, who's about 4 years older than me, who was a kind of a wonderkind, and who was my counselor and music teacher and music camp. Now he's a professor at New England Conservatory, and he happens to be discovered that his family had a klezmer tradition in his family, and he wants to rediscover this and perform the music. So he says, we're going to give a concert of Jewish music and play this music that my family played. It's called klezmer and Yiddish music. Do you want to play it? I say yes. We play 3 songs on a concert in like 1980 or 1981, I forget, 79, somewhere around there. 3 songs on a concert, and people start asking the band, oh, give me your card. We want to hire you for this or that. We knew 3 songs, and that became the Klezmer Conservatory Band.
Can we see that photo of the?
Yeah,
we have that photo of the first album of the Klezmer Conservatory Band. We would like to bring that up because it's actually amazing. Can we like zoom in a little bit on that? So tell us where you are in this photo.
Well,
that's great.
Getting closer, good. If you see the drummer front and center,
yeah.
As you look at it, I'm to the left of him, to his right, the guy with the beard and the long hair and the ponytail, and
a trumpet in your hand.
Actually, a cornet.
Oh,
and
excuse
interestingly, this is a very interesting group of people. Many of them don't play music at all. They're in computers and real estate and everything. But the two people closest to me, to my right, to the left, is Ingrid Munson, who was the other cornet player who became an ethnomusicology professor at Harvard. And below me is Don Byron, who has become and always was a very adventurous clarinet player and another musical adventurer for whom klezmer was just one of a multiplicity of musics that he absorbed and assimilated. So that was where we all were coming from.
I just really am struck by, the influence of Black culture and jazz and African-American culture on your musical upbringing, right, up to the point that you've just talked about. I mean, just how the professor at Brown and how he influenced you, and viewing the oral tradition and jazz and having your degree in Afro-American music. I mean, actually, there's an interesting thread there.
Yes. I can't deny it. I mean, I didn't grow... Well, I grew up with it just a little bit. There was a radio station that called WRVR, and we used to listen at dinner at my table. That was my only good music at home. There was a jazz show DJ'd by Ed Beach, and that's the only exposure I had to jazz. But once I got to college, I met a very crazy sax player named Gary Shore, and we basically spent endless hours, like in stairwells, playing swing and bebop tunes together endlessly. And that, and Brother Ah, and then, learning at the New England Conservatory. And I have to acknowledge, my Rebbe's, my great teacher, Jackie Byard, one of the greatest musicians of all time. Also, it's interesting. I've always been less attracted to genre and more attracted to personality and weirdness and idiosyncrasy. That all my life, like, what did I listen to as a kid? Of course, I listened to rock because that's what I grew up with. But mostly it was Frank Zappa. It was the weirdos. And when classical music, yeah, of course I listened to Mozart or whatever, whatever. But really I'm attracted to, Alfred Schnittke and Sophia Gubaidulina and the weirdos. And in every musical scene, and Jackie Byard, my teacher, yeah, he's the quintessential jazz musician. He played with Mingus and Rassan and everyone. But when you hear his solos, he's got Debussy coming into his solos. He's got Charles Ives. He's got Sousa marches. He's got the entire history of music. And I've really always been attracted to people for whom I guess we would say now they just cross borders. Borders don't even exist.
Yeah.
It's about the world we encounter and listen and learn and study and assimilate and process and find your own way to express yourself using these tools.
And crossing borders is clearly natural to you and to your music. And it's also part of Yiddishkayt's ethos. But I'm curious, like, does the fluidity of music allow it to naturally break down those borders? Or do you actually have to have that ethos inside of you to want to break down those borders for music to actually make that leap?
Oh, that's a really good question, and it's complicated, and we could really get sidetracked by it. I would say, I think a lot, okay, I'm going to change the subject a little bit.
Okay.
A lot of what I've done, and I realize, the good thing about getting older is you can see what you've done and make generalizations. When you're younger, you're just doing it and you're not thinking about it. And I realize that a lot of what I do is often idea-based. I think about it, I study it, I research, and then that's why I can do so many projects that are so different, because each one has its own kind of intellectual justification and reality. And why do I bring this up as an answer to your question? Because I realized in my studies that studying a genre of music is like learning a language. And you have to listen, you have to learn the stylistic parameters of the genre. What creates a genre? What do you have to do? Just like if you want to speak French like a Parisian, or if you want to speak French like Quebecois, you have to listen. You have to understand the phraseology and this and that and imitate. And imitation is part of it. And there was an exercise that we did in college at the conservatory, which I think is a metaphor. We would take a Miles Davis solo, transcribe it, learn it by ear, learn how to play it. Then what you would do is you would play one chorus of Miles Davis, and then one chorus of your own, then one chorus of Miles Davis, one chorus of your own. And what you were learning was both about the tradition, but about how to encounter a tradition. So then what I did, I started doing all these gigs. And what I very quickly learned is on which gig did I have to sound exactly like the genre? And in which gig was I allowed to put myself into it? And that's a very important thing. So, and people are, and when they say genre, people might generalize, oh, jazz, oh, klezmer, oh, salsa music, but that's way too large because you don't swing a Count Basie chart the way you swing a Duke Ellington chart. You don't play the same kind of vibrato when you're playing in Celia Cruz's band than you do when you're playing in the Fort Apache band. You know, you have to really know the details and know how to fit in. And this is all by listening. And listening for me is always a metaphor for respect. I'm listening to you, Aaron. I'm thinking, I'm trying to get inside where you are. I'm listening to this music. And so therefore, every time I'm playing something where you have to really be inside the genre and sound like you're one of that, then I learned how to do that. But then I'm also getting those skills that when I'm just being me, I can pull this. It's like it's all inside me now. I can pull it out and do anything I want with it.
It's so interesting because it really, like, all the things that you're saying are really important to your career and what you actually end up doing and why you're so good at what you do. I mean, so you do listen, you have inculcated, and like all of these different streams of cultures have come into you, and you really have processed them, and you can imitate them, or you can sound just like them, as you said. And you also have your own voice, which comes out so clearly. And I feel like, you know, there's so many amazing things you did. Like you toured with the knee plays with David Byrne and Robert Wilson. You toured Europe with Kip Hanrahan and Jack Bruce. I mean, do you want to talk about either of those, or do we want to move into like actually something that this audience might know really well, which is like the formation of the klezmatics?
Okay, I'll just kind of touch on all that, playing with different people. And I just want to say it's been such a gift. It's so unexpected. And with everyone I play with, I try to learn something. I try to learn, because anyone who's really famous, I've found, no matter what, if they're really famous, it's because they've worked really hard. It's because they've made choices and they're very clear. And I just look at all of each one and say, God, who is this person? And what do they do? And what do you learn? And from Robert Wilson, you learn that he's insane about lighting, that lighting is at the core of what he does, and the details of how, he's just obsessive with it. And, with Itzhak Perlman, it's this, and with another person, it's that. And it's just to keep on learning from every one of these people. And on Kip Hanrahan's was where I really got my biggest lesson in Afro-Cuban music, because the greatest players in the world, Milton Cardona and Giovanni Hidalgo and Andy Gonzalez, were all in the band. And we would hang out for hours after every show, listening to music and studying it and singing and clapping and learning clave. So I feel that I'm a perennial student, and I'm just so blessed to have encountered so many people and learned so much. And and I want to say now, and maybe you want to actually, I'll let you lead it, and I'll remember.
Okay. Well, all of this then. Oh, what was the instrument your fourth grade teacher gave you?
Trumpet.
So they put a trumpet.
They asked me what I wanted to play.
Yeah, they did ask you, huh?
They said, "What do you want to play?" I said, "Trumpet first and upright bass second," because my cousin Frankie, he was big Frankie, I was little Frankie, played trumpet. But my great uncle Lou London, who my son is named after, was a bass player, and he was a real character.
Okay.
And so so those were the two instruments I knew. So I put trumpet and bass.
Fantastic. My third grade teacher, I had a note that said, "What should Aaron play?" And she just looked at me and said, "Clarinet." So that was it. So let's look at this image of the klezmatics from 2016 and just bring it up. This is a more recent shot, but tell us, how did the klezmatics start? Give us the origin story.
Okay. No, I'm going to connect to the last thing that we said, because this is on my mind.
Okay.
I told you, and you responded about how I learned each of these musics by immersing myself, and how it's a process of imitation. That's how I learned klezmer. I did not learn klezmer because I am a Jew, because I am a descendant of East European Jews. That's not how I got to it.
Yeah.
I got to it the same way I got to every other kind of music. And everything I've learned has been by research and imitation and copying and work.
Yeah, work.
The problem is
practice.
The problem, which I decided to make not a problem. And this is maybe the crux of everything that happened. So here we are in 1986 or so, in the mid 80s. I just moved to New York. As you said, I toured Europe with Kip Hanna. I was blessed. I was playing in Lester Bowie's Brass Fantasy. Lester Bowie, the great trumpeter from the Art Ensemble of Chicago.
Wow.
What a gift. Oh my God. I'm just playing with everything. I'm doing salsa bands. I'm doing everything. Same thing. And I'm still playing with the Klezmer Conservatory Band. But they're in Boston, and I'm getting tired of commuting. So someone puts an ad in a newspaper, the Village Voice, says, "I want to play klezmer." I answer the ad, and the guy who put the ad in the paper disappears, and the people who are left there become the klezmatics. Lauren Sklamberg, who I met in a Balkan brass band, Zlatny Uste, different Margot Leverett, who we met playing music on the street. Dave Licht, who had just come to New York and was playing punk rock for Shimmy Disc. We all met and became the klezmatics. Then weirdly through a crazy connection with Ben Mandelson of the Three Mustafas 3, who I met when I was in England with David Byrne playing at the IPA doing the Knee Plays music. Everything's a long story, but basically Ben Mandelson, who was one of the people who created world music. How do you like that for a big statement?
Wow. Yeah.
World music was a creation that happened in England in approximately 1986 or 88, above a bar, and it was international, and they were arguing this before the internet, what to call. They wanted to know where in Tower Records to put all the music that couldn't go anywhere else.
Yeah, right.
And the French wanted to call it musique mondiale, and I think the Germans wanted to call it Weltbeat or World Beat, and the Brits, who are always on top of the stuff, they called it world music, and that was the name that was decided on. And then you went into Tower and it said world music, and that's okay. So Ben Mandelson we meet each other because the Three Mustafas 3 had recorded a klezmer song on their first album, but they did the same trick that Moby Grape did on one of their LPs, where you're listening at 33 and all of a sudden there's a track at the wrong speed because you have to turn the record player up to 78 for one track.
Wow.
So I knew this. I tell Ben this. He's very fascinated that I knew about this. We become friends, and he invites me and the klezmatics, who are brand new, and my other band, Les Miserables Brass Band, a world music brass band, to the first festival of world music in Berlin, Heimatklange, in 1988, which later was the festival that Robbie was talking about. At that festival, I meet my wife, Tina Kinderman. We meet Borkowski Akbar, who's the producer of Piranha Records, who wants to record us. But here's the point. Here's the important point. Even though you and I know, and I'm telling everyone in the world now, that klezmer for me is no more authentic or essential than any other music that I have learned, whether it's African American music, improvisation, Afro-Cuban, et cetera, et cetera. The producers basically just as much as told us, said, you're a bunch of young Jews from New York City. We can sell you to Europe because you're authentic.
Yeah, you're authentic.
But you're authentic. And we were very pro-gay, so everything we were doing was through a gay activist lens. So we couldn't have been more New York, multicultural, Jewish, radical, and therefore authentic. Of the whole band, only one person heard this music growing up, Lawrence Sklamberg. We all learned it. So I thought about this, and I remember thinking of it then, and it's kind of both plagued and yet informed my entire life. I said, you know what? I will allow myself to be sold this way. Because my goal from then on will be to make good music that contains my aesthetic vision. No matter what genre is not important. And if I'm going to get gigs in Jewish music, then I'll just do it my way. And then what happened was I would do one, and one thing always leads to the next. Oh, you did this. Would you like to do that? That's how we ended up at Ivia. We'll talk about that in a minute. One thing leads to the next. Oh, you're the guy who did that. Okay. And I could, many people, Don Byron as one, for example, we were together learning this music at the same time. He ended up sort of resenting being put into the box as a klezmer musician. This bothered him. And I said, you know what? I just don't care. Life is too short. I'm not going to fight about it. I'm going to make the best music I can. And yes, it hurts me when people go, oh, you're Frank, you're the klezmer guy. Or, you know, especially when it's the head of BAM and I'm trying to get a gig, you know, writing a theater score for an opera there, and he's putting me in this bag. And I just, you know,
Well, it did give you this, I mean, in the end, the expediency of allowing yourself to be, quote unquote, sold that way really does help your career and does help you do the kind of music that you want to do, which we're going to get to in the next part of this show. I mean, and it is like, so I just want to like touch on a couple of things. I mean, you guys are a Grammy Award winning band. You got to translate and go into the Woody Guthrie archives, which was quite an honor, and look through the material there, pick out songs that he had composed or actually had written to the lyrics for, but not taken them to the next step. No.
He absolutely had melodies for every one of these songs.
He did.
We just don't know them. They were never recorded. No one knows them. So his daughter Nora has used that as an excuse to get all these different bands, you know, Wilco and everyone to write new music.
So as the Klezmatics, let's just watch this one music video, your quote unquote first music video you ever did, which was just in 2018.
This is recorded live in Bucharest, by the way.
And that's Lawrence Sklamberg singing from Los Angeles. So what I love about this first music video, it actually is like kind of the roots of the Klezmatics too. I mean, you're being radical, you're being your New York selves. Like let's be heretics.
Right. And in fact, the first thing that we did, the first thing that defined the klezmatics was not what we did, but what we didn't do. And this was because we really didn't know what the heck we were doing about the music. That came later. But we did have a sense of who we were as people. That's why our first album is called Schweigen ist Tot, which is silence equals death in Yiddish, which is the ACT UP slogan for AIDS activism, but also spoken in Germany where it was recorded and released. It says that if the language and people are silent, if the music is silent, the culture dies. So we were always tying it together. What we refused to do, let me go on the side. By the 1960s and 70s, Yiddish music, to whatever extent was around, had essentially become a music of nostalgia. And it was kitsch. It really was kitschy. This is what I said about Jewish aesthetics being an oxymoron. And we just decided we were not going to do kitsch. We were not going to engage in nostalgia. We were not going to play songs where we didn't believe in the words just because people wanted to hear those songs. Oh, play Romania, Romania. Why? We don't like Romania, or, we were never from there. And, the words, any man who dances with his wife is a fool. But that's bullshit. I mean, just like stupid stuff. We said, we don't believe that. So what happened? We started two very simple things. One, we researched songs that existed that did say what we wanted to say. And there's an entire Yiddish socialist song tradition about changing the world and making the world a better place. So we don't have to do anything. It's all there. Research becomes our tool and our friend for everything. And you find the songs that say what you want. And then if you can't find the song that says what you want, you write new words, or you get someone else to write new words. So the first thing about that was my ode with Michael Wex to, there's so many Jewish drinking songs. We love drinking, and there's so many drinking songs. And I said, why aren't there any songs about smoking marijuana? I smoke more marijuana than I drink. So I said, Michael Wex, great author, great Yiddishist. Can you write a song in Yiddish about the joys of smoking marijuana? And he does, and we record Mizmor Shir Lahanef. So using text to express who we are and to try to make a difference in the world, and the music and the text non-kitsch, no shtick, no nostalgia, just being present.
That's so interesting because that's going to be our transition to Tamar Rogoff and Ivya. And so because I'll say, because those are literally the exact things I say to myself is no nostalgia, no kitsch, but it's where I get where I get that inspiration is listening to your music performed with this site-specific dance theater piece in Belarus, and that is the Ivya project. So how did you get selected by Tamar Rogoff, the amazing director, choreographer, dancer who created this piece? How did she pick you to be and you were the musical director?
I was the composer and musical director and trumpeter. There are two answers to that, and they're both important. On one hand, it's exactly what I was just talking about. It's an outgrowth that we just formed the klezmatics. We just started putting this stuff out, and we had this aesthetic and political attitude. So my aesthetics related to her aesthetics. Our mixture of research into history with contemporaneity reflects what she was doing. So when she was looking for someone to work with who understood Jewish music and could go to the roots, but also understood contemporary theater, because I love contemporary theater. I'm, a big student of Grotowski's and of Artaud's and of, this is a big part of me. So I love theater insanely. So she found me, but the other thing is very topical. Local. I moved to New York. I moved eventually to the Lower East Side. I was living on East 4th Street. In my building, is Jody Oberfelder Ream. My new best friend, who I met at a Jewish arts retreat, is Bonnie Stein. Yoshiko Chuma lives down the block. Tamar Rogoff lives a whopping 8 blocks away. This is the heart of the 1970s, 1980s New York downtown dance community, and they're all my neighbors. And Bonnie knows them all. Mm-hmm. And I've created scores for all of them, and I still work with all of them. So basically, there was a personal local community connection, and the fact that I knew Jewish music and understood where she was coming from aesthetically, and I say yes to everything.
And so Tamar found you, she had heard the Klezmatics, and somebody said, like, let's bring, you should bring Frank on as your musical director.
Probably Bonnie.
Something like that, or Bonnie. And, we were in New York at the same time, because I was in that Lower East Side dance world at Dance Theater Workshop from 84 to 86, but we never met. And I saw, of course, Yoshiko Chuma perform many times. But we end up meeting in Ivya, in Belarus, and it's 1994. And Tamar, we're just going to set this up. Tamar, the piece is, and see if I can do this in 30 seconds. The piece is, Tamar had, her family on her father's side came from this small shtetl in Belarus, which was formerly in Poland. And I think up to 30 members of her family were lost in the Holocaust. And when Tamar is going to be our next guest, and we're going to get this in detail, but she decided to go deep into the research, and she finds her father's diaries from this time when he goes to visit his family, his uncles and his aunts and the rest of his family who are still living in, this is the 1930s, who are living in Poland. And there's beautiful 8mm clips that she has of this time, and she has her father's writings from the time, and she uses that as a way in to understand the life of the people who were living there. And she wants to, through this piece, which is literally performed in a forest where the massacre of all of the Jews in this town of Ivya was what took place. So there were about 2,000 Jews in Ivya, and about 1,900 of them were massacred. And I don't have all the details correct here, but it was like 99% of them were killed in this forest. And so the piece takes place in this place that is literally haunted by these souls. And yet, what came out of this was a dance, theater, music, site-specific piece that transcended kitsch, transcended borders, transcended cultures, brought together people from, I think, 8 different countries. There were Ukrainians, Russians, Latvians, Lithuanians, Americans, everybody working together and multilingually to bring together a piece in the forest. And I got sent as the site visitor. So I was Dance Theater Workshop, Dancing in the Streets, Elise Bernhardt's amazing group. And this is like going back to how things work. Elise Bernhardt knew me from Dancing in the Streets because I knew her from Dance Theater Workshop. And so we became friends. And then I got to be on the panel that gave the money and said, Tamar's piece looks like a good idea. Let's do it. And it got funded. And then Elise was pregnant with her first son. And she said, I can't go do the visit on behalf of the funder to see if the money is being spent well. Do you want to go to Belarus? And so my wife, Judith, and I went. And that's the first time I ever got to see Eastern Europe. And that's where I met you, literally in Ivya. And so let's watch this clip of the couples dancing from the piece, the Ivya Project by Tamar Rogoff. I think this is going to set this up really well. You're going to see the audience is wearing like shrouds, because the audience is witness to this life before everything disappears. And what Tamar really focuses on is the beauty of the culture that exists up until this point. And everyone is kind of like, they're kind of, we are the audiences, are the phantoms. That's so beautiful. I can tell you that scene still has always stuck with me, and it always brings a tear to my eye because it is so. The music and the dancing was so powerful. So, what does that scene tell? What was going on in that scene?
There's so much to say. First of all, if someone's watching this, they might think that music was like put on it as if it's a film. No, we're standing right outside the frame of that camera playing the music,
playing live.
Playing live. That's
And you had to get up and move. Like the whole thing is moving through the forest. So the musicians are moving, the audience is moving, and we're following the characters as they're going.
It's funny. Forest. Luckily, I had to do that in the Robert Wilson piece, and I learned a lot from this great director about how to be a performer. Musically, let's separate kitsch and nostalgia from beauty. And I think for better or worse, I try to write really beautiful melodies. And I listen to this, and this is what I was saying is it's a genre that I sort of have invented in my life. It's the Yiddish Russian Irish waltz. It's because it's got all of that in it, but it's just trying to be something beautiful. And the guy dancing with the baby is Lithuania's most famous actor, and what Tamar does. There's so much going on here, Aaron, because those are professional actors from 5 different countries and amateurs, people from the town who never acted before in their life. And this piece was seen by tens of thousands of people, all from the other side of the so-called Iron Curtain. Yeah. So no one in the West even knows this existed, and tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people before the internet saw this piece. Yeah. And
there were literally busloads of people coming in from all over Ukraine and Belarus.
And everything was so charged with history, with contemporaneity, and I'm tearing up also because as you said, this is now. Tamar made a point. We're not dancing on the graves of the Jews. That was another part of the forest. She felt that would be totally disrespectful. But we're in the forest where the mass grave was, just right around the corner. But this is also, if you look at maps, when Chernobyl exploded. The wave of the radioactivity went right to this part of Belarus. So you're dealing with the fact that is this land contaminated? Are these people all going to come down with cancer and Jewish? And the other thing, and again, you never know this till hindsight. This happened in arguably the only 2 years where this could have ever happened. After the fall of the wall, but before Lukashenko solidified his power and made Belarus a pseudo-Kremlin puppet, where nothing like this could happen again. So it just, and you realize that there's something ineffable, and you're just part of it, and being there and learning to work in multiple languages and make close bonds with people, even if you can hardly say 2 words to each other. How do you get to know someone?
Yeah.
And I think of something that I learned from Min Tanaka, the great Japanese artist who's also plagued with a label. People always say the Buto artist, and he says, I am not Buto. The same way I would say I am not klezmer. But he's the most famous Buto Gosho. He said when people see him and his company dance, they don't want to see them dance. They want to learn who they are as people. And I think that this informs everything I do. The way I teach the musicians here to play, I want to get them not to just play the notes, but to put themselves in it. Everyone is got to show who they are and share themselves. And so everything becomes more than just notes on a page or choreography. Oh, lift your leg here. It's got deeper meaning. And I think this work, throwing me as a young person, I was just barely in my 30s then, to deal with multicultural, multi-language, multi-histories, to be under under the tutelage of a great director who could shepherd a project to understand how to use history and contemporary nature. All these things has become almost a template for everything I've done and continue to do.
And for me too. I mean, I think we all learned so much from Tamar Rogoff, and
Yes.
there's a great deal of debt that an intellectual and spiritual and cultural debt that we owe her, because this really was a transformational piece for us. And for me, I was there, and I just realized all of a sudden that Yiddish, which is the way I grew up, I went to a Kinderschule. I couldn't find a place for it, and when it ever came up in a public way, it felt kitschy to me, and it felt nostalgic, and I was literally ashamed of it in the public persona. Like, I grew up with it in my community. We celebrated it, we sang, we taught, some of us spoke Yiddish. I mean, I
have to ask you a question, because
Yeah.
this happened to me. I don't speak Yiddish. That's another
Yeah.
story. I speak what?
Yeah.
Was there anyone in Ivia who, for whatever linguistic reasons, you could only speak to in Yiddish?
Yes.
Did you have that experience?
Oh my God.
All of a sudden, this language that you grew up with, all of a sudden it became a real language of necessity for you to communicate with someone, because that was the only common language.
Oh, it was like being on acid for me, because, this is a comment from Bonnie Stein. Love this project, Tamar. We worked hard with Tamar and Frank and all of the amazing artists to make it happen. Yes, Bonnie, and we will be speaking with Tamar on the next edition of this very long-going series. But and yes, so I actually had that I felt like, first of all, I was in a shtetl, and I didn't know that shtetls still existed. I thought they were something that I saw in Fiddler on the Roof, and there were all these black and white images, and I had learned all about the life of Jews in the Pale of the Settlement and the shtetls, and we had studied it, and we knew the songs, and we knew the songs of resistance, and we knew the songs, in my community, we stood for one thing, and that was Zogna Kenmol. That was we didn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We didn't stand for the American. We didn't even play the national anthem, but that was our national anthem. So, but I did get to go to Eastern Europe, and all of a sudden I'm in a shtetl I was in this house, and they had a wood floor. An earthen floor, and there was a couple there. And they had survived the war, and I was in there speaking with them in Yiddish, and I was just having an out-of-body experience, or an experience from another life, because everything was now coming together for me. And all of those things of experiencing shtetl life firsthand, seeing the way Tamar brought it to life, because what she was saying was, I'm celebrating the life and the culture that existed here for 1,000 years. And that became the ethos of Yiddishkayt. Like, how do we, and what I got out of it was, contemporary artists are the way to bring Yiddish into the current moment, right?
I need to say two things.
Okay.
And we're never going to get to the end of our list of things.
We're going to have to skip over a couple.
But I need to say two things. First of all, there was this experience that, I don't know if you remember, someone died, and there was a funeral in the nearby town, and I went to it. I don't know why. And it was a Jew. It was a Jew, because there weren't many Jews left. Most of them had emigrated to Israel. And I went to the funeral, and it was an open casket funeral. And the body was on display in an open casket with candles burning. And later there was a procession, and finally they closed it. And I was just like, oh my God, what world am I in? The same thing you're saying. But then I always try to learn from this. And I had always been taught, we Jews, we do this. We Jews, we don't do that. Funerals were always closed casket. It's the non-Jews that have open casket. Well, no, that's why. And it made me realize that so many things are cultural assumptions, and everyone wants to generalize that their cultural assumption is the whole truth of a situation. So I think I learned that in spades from this project about just understanding that, just keep your eyes open, your ears open, and don't assume that what you know is what it is. And that was, and I forget the second thing I wanted to say, but that was crucial.
Let's watch one more clip from Ivya, the Ivya project of the Sabbath Bride. You know, what's going on here is just, it's hard to say how profound that was. So we're, as an audience, we're all at the edge of this beautiful giant field. And out of somewhere, this woman, all in white, who later I came to associate with the idea she's the Sabbath bride, you know, comes walking across that beautiful set. And we're in this place of incredible beauty, and you're evoking both Tamar through the costuming and through the acting and the dance, and of course your music. It's evoking this amazing bit of the Jewish connection to this world. Like, we are part of this world. This is where we're from. And it all came together in that piece. And I also think it comes together in that clip, too.
I don't know if people could see her headdress, her crown is a challah.
Oh, my God.
It's a challah. Yeah. But I remember the other thing I wanted to say, and this reflects it. Another thing I learned that I've used in my entire career about how do you get people to stretch their parameters? How do you get people to get outside of what they think is their comfort zone and to try things? And I saw how Tamar did it in this piece. And I've used this working with folk musicians in Austria and everywhere, and amateur musicians. And what you do is you meet people from a point of their knowledge and comfort, and then just go from that point. And so she got the amateur townspeople to all act and do things, but like the dancing, they know how to waltz. So you start with that, but then you aestheticize it and you contextualize it. And by meeting people and by, again, listening and respecting and knowing and doing the research and knowing where they're coming from, then you can connect, and then they trust you, and then you can stretch them. And it worked there, and it just continually works. That's the other thing.
And that piece, if the Ivya project was performed, what, 25, 30 times? I mean, it was several weeks. It was performed every day for several weeks, and literally tens of thousands of people came to it. Millions of people saw it because it was on the local press as well, and it was on television in all these countries that were formerly Soviet Union as well as Russia, and it really had a tremendous impact. And then I come back, it's 94, I come back and I said, oh my God, I get it. Contemporary artists are the key. And I have a meeting with, and I bring together all these people who are involved with Yiddish in Los Angeles. And I say, I want to create a new organization where we're going to do a Yiddish festival all around the world. And they say, well, Murray Brown famously says to me, Aaron, why don't you just start with Los Angeles? You know, the world is a big thing. Why don't we just start at the Valley Cities Jewish Community Center and just start here? So it became Yiddishkayt Los Angeles. Herschel Hartman, I think, came up with the word Yiddishkayt and said, well, here, you could use this word. And of course, that's where Yiddishkayt is born. After Ivya, I bring actually Tamar to Los Angeles to talk about the piece because I was so excited to help raise money for the film. But then, so that's where Yiddishkayt comes. And then Yiddishkayt brings you to Los Angeles several times, like many times. So you have been part of our collaboration through the years. We did, I brought the Klezmatics with Brave Old World, and we produced you at UCLA. And I think, to my knowledge, it was the first time that klezmer was performed in a non-Jewish space, actually in a public arena and not in a Jewish space. And we put you up at UCLA, and we sold out two shows. It was an amazing show. I can't believe I did two mega bands, Brave Old World and Klezmatics, on one ticket. I mean, you guys, both of you could have filled up the whole thing.
But not coincidentally, both of whose lead singers are from Los Angeles. Just saying.
Yes, absolutely. Michael Alpert, who was the first guest on this show, and Lawrence Glamberg, and it was so interesting, the Los Angeles contribution to Yiddish, to the contemporary Yiddish Renaissance. I'm
sorry, I'm going to cut you over a second.
Yeah.
Let's not go here. But one could argue, and I sometimes have, that the entire klezmer and Yiddish Renaissance comes from Southern California, and it's mostly embodied in Jerome Rothenberg.
And what about Mickey Katz?
Well, no, that's the real thing in its time. But I'm talking about the revival, the contemporary revival. Jerome Rothenberg, professor of poetry, editor of the Big Book of Jewish Poetry, founder of the Big Jewish Band. They were one of the first things, and many of the people like Stuart Menon and Michael Alpert, they all floated, and Stuart Brotman, who was from down there, they all floated. I mean, one could argue that this is where the whole thing came out of.
I'm gonna, like you, as like I can add that to like how Los Angeles has helped influence contemporary culture in ways that have been overlooked, like modern dance and Martha Graham. Martha Graham is from Southern California. Okay, we'll go there later because there's so much still to cover.
Okay, you were talking about what we've done together.
Yeah, I want to actually, like, let's show this piece, Glickle of Hamelin. It's beautiful. Adrian Cooper is in this on the right, and Jenny Romaine on the left. Go ahead.
I want to for the moment, let's set up a little binary system, even though we're generally non-binary. Pieces that we do that are totally in the culture and explore this culture in particular, and pieces that we do that are all about exploring multicultural connections or non-connections. So, and Glickle of Hamelin is definitely a piece that is totally about us exploring our culture. Of course, that's part of universal in particularity. There's something universal. This book, okay, so on the left is Jenny Romaine. On the right is Adrian Cooper, our hero. Another Angelino, isn't she? No, she's Chicago. Sorry.
Yeah.
And Glickle of Hamelin was the author of the first. She's the first Yiddish woman to write and publish her memoirs. And she lived in the time of the plague. This is a Yiddish plague song from 700 years ago that Adrian taught me from her research. We're back in the Middle Ages, choreography by Jenny Romaine, and we're looking at Jewish life in the Middle Ages as written down by the first Yiddish woman's memoirist and making it contemporary theater.
Yeah. It was a beautiful piece of theater, and we brought you guys to Los Angeles in 1998 to perform this as part of our first citywide Yiddish festival, which ended up for a while was the biggest Yiddish festival in North America and quite extensive. And we had you perform that at the Los Angeles Theater Center on Spring Street, because again, everything that we wanted to do with you was to take contemporary artists dealing with Yiddish culture and place it in non-Jewish settings so that everybody, so that the barriers to it would be open to everybody and they wouldn't feel like, oh my God, I'm going into a synagogue or a Jewish community center. That was a very powerful piece. We also did Essen together, which was amazing. We brought the Klezmatics to the Ford. We did this incredible piece, though. We're gonna end this section of the conversation, the Viva Yiddish piece in 2008. Let's just look at the card that.
I miss Will Dog. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Will Dog from Ozo Motley was a collaborator. Michael Alpert, Mike Burston. We had several members of the band Ozo Motley. We had a full banda band as well, which is music, brass music from northern Mexico. There were about 18 musicians on stage. we oh my God, we had Ceci Bastida was
That's
also
right.
a singer
That's
in
right.
this. So, and this was at Grand Performances. And I'm sorry we don't have a clip from it, but it was just this wonderful coming together of so many different musical styles. Because what we were trying to do was to say, what would Yiddish music sound like if it had never gone away in Los Angeles, if it had continued to have the dialogue that it had in Boyle Heights between the Chicanos and the Jews who were there, and that dialogue had disappeared, and we were trying to bring that dialogue back, and you were part of that, doing that so musically, and you basically expressed it musically so well. All of you on stage did.
Well, I mean, also part of it is the personal histories of the people involved. You know, both Mike Burston, because of his Argentinian connection, and Michael Alpert, who's basically considers like Yiddish, Spanish, maybe the third of his 10 languages that he speaks, or something like that. And myself with these two, you know, I still feel that I know Latinx music better than I know klezmer music ultimately. And Will Dog and people, again, willing to listen to each other, knowing how to communicate. It's the same thing over and over, and what you come up with. And it was such a joyous spectacle. It was such a joyous, and I think that you, Aaron, just to sing your praises, this is really one of your many strengths. One of your strengths is knowing LA. You know LA like no one I know. You've given me your personal LA tour, which I'll never forget. But you know about the place like Boyle Heights, and you're going to connect to the place and the people, and you're going to talk to the people, and you're going to make smart choices about who you bring into something. And another thing I'll never forget, at the same time, same festival where we performed Essen, which is a cooking show where Lauren, Adrian, Cooper, and I cook Jewish food on stage while singing songs about food.
Yeah.
Well, you created the LA Jewish Deli panel discussion, which I will never forget, with the classic line. I believe it was the old guy, it could have been Cantor's, I forget, you'll correct me, who was saying that you have to cut the pastrami with air and Luft. And Luft, of course, is Yiddish for air. That was his line. You have to spread it with air and Luft. This was a highlight of my life.
Well, and that was also, like, we have to say that the late and iconic and amazing, incomparable Jonathan Gold was the host and the moderator of that panel. And it would not have happened without him, because he wanted to do it. And I met Jonathan through Lauren Sklamberg's mother, Libby, who said, she was on the Yiddishkayt board, and she said, I've got my neighbor, he's really involved with food, and he might, because we were going to bring food into that festival. And I said, well, who's your neighbor? And she said, Jonathan Gold. I said, Jonathan Gold is your neighbor? You can get Jonathan Gold to come? And she said, yeah. So I got in touch with Jonathan, and he put on this panel with Al Langer from Langer's, Art from Art's Deli. I can't remember the name of the woman from Cantor's.
Woman who's the daughter. She was the daughter
of the original founder from Cantor's and Junior's. So we had 4 delis, and it was amazing. And that was part of our celebration of food, and you guys did it in music. So, but this is a good transition to, like, talking about Latin music and its influence on you, to Hatue, the Cuban opera Yiddish Cuban opera you did. So why don't you talk a little bit about, you want to have the clip with it as you talk about it, or do you want to set it up first?
Let me just give you a thing. Thank you for,
because this is absolutely amazing what you did here. And it's kind of like you kind of got inspired. Well, maybe, you worked on the same epic scale as Tamar's piece of your project.
Yeah, because why work on anything less than that? You know. So, okay, God, there's so many things to say. I wanted to write a Yiddish opera. Why? Because I felt like in our world, Yiddish theater had become nostalgia and kitsch again and shit.
Yeah.
And B, because all the great, I mean, David Rogoff was in the Ivia project, but he's passed. All that generation is gone. The Folksbiene is doing great things, teaching young people Yiddish, but they're not fluent. And and I said, but opera singers are trained to sing in any language. That's what they do. So if I write a Yiddish opera, they can sing it, and we can make modern Yiddish theater.
Yeah.
Then I needed a libretto. I needed a text. And what are you going to do? I could, I didn't want to write a shtetl opera. It's been done. I didn't want to do that. I wanted something else. And through Michael Posnick, it's a sad story, I'm not going to tell it, but we were drinking and he tells me that his father-in-law, his wife's father, escaped the pogroms in Ukraine, couldn't get into the US because of restrictive immigration. His family went to Cuba. He grew up in Cuba. He started the first Yiddish newspaper in Cuba. And before he left and finally got to the US, he wrote an epic poem in Yiddish in Havana to Hatwe, the Taino, the indigenous people, the leader who led the first uprising against the colonialist Spanish and was martyred. And he wrote this epic Yiddish poem. I said, that's my opera.
Wow.
That's my opera.
That's my opera, yeah.
And it did become a multilingual opera. So we're going to play you a clip that just, I don't know, for me, it puts everything together. We had to create all these theatrical conceits so that there would be a logic for something with 3 languages. So here's the conceit. The Spaniards speak in Spanish. The Tainos speak the words of Asher Penn's poem in Yiddish, since we don't know the Taino language, and we have this Yiddish poem. So there's Velasquez interrogating the woman who is the chief of the Taino chiefs were men or women, and they've captured her to tell him where is Hatwe. And the musical language is like post-Alban-Berg.
And the setting, it looks like a Cuban nightclub.
It's in a nightclub. It takes place in a nightclub. It goes between 2 time zones. Can't begin to go.
And the Cuban nightclubs are influenced by Las Vegas.
Robbie or someone, can we make it louder?
Yeah, let's listen to it a little.
You don't want to speak? I'm going to torture you. We're going to pull out your tongue. So I got to tell you, what she's about to sing is her big dying aria, because it's not an opera if there's not a big opera when someone is killed. And here it is. Oh, you white people. You white people. You accursed, condemned white people. For Schultena, curse. It's such an imprecation. In my heart, I know what is true. In my tongue is not a snake, and my heart is pure. And now she sings her big aria. I will not live if I cannot live a pure, true life. Oh, Visa. And the poet, Asher Penn, just uses the word white over and over again. It's not a Jewish poem. It's a Yiddish poem. Why is he obsessed with the whites being evil? Because he came from a town where the whites meant the Cossacks, who came into your Jewish village and killed people. He saw his best friend at age 9 killed by a Cossack with her head cut off by a sword. He saw this. And the venom that he feels for that is he puts on the Taino.
Who were driven to extinction by the Spaniards in the colonization of Cuba.
And then the musical language is not klezmer in the slightest. except the very final cadence. I can't help myself.
Yeah.
I just do a very East European Jewish cadence just to touch on it, but we're not trying to be klezmer. So
it's an amazing piece, and I can't wait for LA Opera or Long Beach Opera or somebody in Los Angeles to take this up, because it is it's genius to have these different cultural traditions, meeting here, and especially to introduce Yiddish into this Havana setting, and for people, and for it to be the voice of the extinguished Taino people.
I had an amazing experience. I was in Havana working this, and I got a copy of a Spanish newspaper. And on the last page, someone died who was one of the last native speakers of Taino.
Oh my God.
And when it made me realize, Aaron, that whatever we think about Yiddish being an endangered language, compared to Taino, we're just flying. This is a language, they're trying to reconstruct the language. And through my linguistic work, I've gotten in touch with the Taino experts who are trying to reconstruct the language. So it's like all these things, and this gets to, maybe this is how we should start going towards the closing up. Yeah. By learning the lessons that we learn from our culture and tradition, whatever our means, as ways of seeing others and making connections. And if we take a subject like the importance of endangered languages to our world, to the world's diversity of ideas, this is an important thing. And we look at Yiddish and where it is, and Taino and Tibetan and other languages. And what can we do? And I'm starting a project through Ghetto Songs, which we probably won't have time to talk about, of trying to sing songs in different cultures and different languages, because songs preserve language. They're teaching tools. We mix the politics with the culture, with the message. And this is what you do. This is what we're all trying to do. And we see big themes that are expressed differently in individual cultures, but we're talking about similar themes, whether it's language, whether it's fighting oppression, minority groups, whether it's human justice, social rights, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I do want to get to a couple more things that you have been doing lately because we had visited several different plagues through in the different clips that we looked at over the last 90 minutes. But during the pandemic, the current plague, you've actually kept busy. And let's look at this amazing, let's talk about how you got to work with Dance Theater of Harlem and what happened. Actually, okay. Hold on. Don't cue it up yet. Let's just...
I'll make it brief. The Klezmatics were supposed to do a piece where we're playing the music with the Dance Theater of Harlem, which is an amazing, one of the first all-black, I don't know if it's the first, so one of the first classical ballet companies in New York, and they still exist for many years. And it was a great honor. And then it was one of the first gigs that canceled. It was supposed to be in April of 2020. Boom, that was gone. It will be rescheduled. And we created a project as an alternative, an online project, where the individual Klezmatics were hooked up with the individual dancers from Dance Theater of Harlem. I was blessed to get Crystal Serrano. We never met. I composed a piece. It was right during the Black Lives Matter protests. And I'd been going out on the streets in New York and hearing the chanting. And I tried, we won't get to it in the clip, I interpolated some of the chants from the protests into this new music piece. I sent it to her. She went in front of the courtroom in Queens, where she lives. And again, you won't see it in this clip, but they wrote Black Lives Matters in chalk on the courtroom. But it was an amazing ballet music collaboration between two artists who have never met.
Well, let's see that. Let's watch this now. In front of the federal courthouse. So you composed the music first, and then she choreographed her own. And she's such a strong dancer. It's so beautiful.
Amazing. Yeah.
And so then, I do want to, we're going to end with Ghetto Songs, which is your most recent CD. Is that right?
My most recent CD, yes. I've released 5 CDs during the last year and a half.
Oh my God. Well, so it's been good for that. And what I love about Ghetto Songs is you're looking at this idea of ghetto from lots of different perspectives, and it kind of ties up all the different themes that we've been talking about. So why don't you give us a little bit about Ghetto Songs?
I was invited to Venice. The Jewish ghetto in Venice is the first ghetto called a ghetto. This is where the word ghetto comes from.
Right.
500 years ago, Jews were only allowed to live in Venice if they lived in this tiny area, which had been an iron foundry. It was a Superfund site, essentially, the most polluted part. And the word for foundry is ghetto. So for their 500th commemoration, they asked me what to do. And long story short, I said, let's talk about ghetto songs, music from Venice ghettos, but from all ghettos. And to make a very long story very short, I made a CD. We have a concert clip that occurred before the pandemic. Even though the music went from Solomoni Rossi of the 1600s to contemporary American music, we even include Los Angeles' great band War, The World is a Ghetto. But you're going to hear 2 little clips that talk about ghettos. One is the song The Ghetto by Donny Hathaway, and then is a song that was written and performed in the Krakow ghetto, and it's performed by Sveta Kundish. So here are 2 very different ghetto songs. That's Brandon Ross. Brandon Ross singing this one.
Yeah, the ghetto. Right. Talking about the ghetto.
That's just it. I love this CD. Actually, it's on my rotation of things I'm listening to all the time.
My thesis, I'll just want to make this short. I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that ghettos become petri dishes because you take one group of people and enclose them in one space, and the particularity of their culture thrives even in the deepest oppression. It shows the incredible strength of human spirit to create culture that expresses every facet of human emotion and life, even in the most adverse circumstances.
Yeah, let's watch that last clip, Maksudi Egelach.
It's a lullaby. Sveta Kundish singing in Yiddish. I mean, what you have to know is that ghettos are not the same experience everywhere. The Venice ghetto was actually an opening. Jews were allowed to live in Venice under these circumstances. The Polish Jewish ghettos of World War II were essentially holding cells to round up the Jews and send them to their death. Yeah. And yet this song comes out of that horrific experience. We do a Brazilian song from the favelas by Tom Jobim, which basically says, in our ghetto, in our favela, these are the shanty towns on the outside of the cities, our people sing and dance and celebrate. We do South African township music because there's entire genres of South African music that were created in their ghetto, in their township. It's, you know, it's a lens. It's a lens to look through at something. And I think this is, again, where you and I and Yiddishkayt and everything we do, you find a lens and then you see what can you explore. What does that show you? You can take a place, Boyle Heights. You can take almost any subject. And if you have an open mind and you do your research and you talk to people and you listen, you can create amazing things.
So let's bring Robbie back, the director of Yiddishkayt, and we're at the end of our 90 minutes. Robbie, were there any questions or any interesting questions to respond to?
Well, we mainly had a lot of incredible comments and a lot of appreciation of all of the work that you've done, Frank, especially, and a lot of memories of the people who both of you have worked with and touched through all sorts of projects. And it's just amazing to see the way that your work, both of you, resonates out from the places where you live and are based, you know, coasts apart from one another, and inspires so many people to connect with cultures across borders, across space, and across time. It's just a beautiful thing to see.
And I'm thinking that the work that you do now as the executive director of Yiddishkayt really resonates with the conversation we just had.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the whole direction of Yiddishkayt, I think, since I've been here for the past 10 years, has been really, it's just in dialogue with these same seeds that were planted in Ivya with you two so many years ago. These ideas about connecting with places and people, the multi-layeredness of history, the multilingual, multi-ethnic, multicultural dialogues that we see just in cultural formations through music, through theater, through dance, and that's where we're heading, I think, for Yiddishkayt for the future, to embrace these, to do, as Frank was saying, you know, we don't see ourselves, you know, even though we have this name Yiddishkayt, it's about a lens that we have, a particular way of looking at the world. But it's not just for a Jewish cultural perspective. It's actually it's a shorthand for a perspective that defines the experience of most people who lived at the margins all around the world, and create probably the most creative aspects of culture all around the world. And it's just, and the two of you, I think, put your finger on exactly those trends and those movements and the ways of bringing people together to see these things happening. And it's, and I think we'll see a lot more of that from Yiddishkayt, but hopefully from all of us over the next couple years.
I hope so too. Frank, thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and I only wish we had, you know, a much longer time frame to do it in. But I think that captured a lot of who you are, I hope.
Yeah, who we all are.
Yeah.
What we're all doing. And Robbie, you know, I feel personally, I've felt this from when you first signed on, that Yiddishkayt is in good hands as it transforms and continues with these ideas, bringing together people, bringing together scholars and artists and people and communities and idea-based creation. It's wonderful. I had a question. That came to me. Is there a link where this will be available to be seen after this is done?
Yes, absolutely. Everyone can always see this both on the Yiddishkayt Facebook page, where it will live for some time, and it also will be on, if you go to YouTube, to our Yiddishkayt channel there, which is youtube.com/Yiddishkayt Los Angeles, and it will also be posted by next week, in the middle of the week, with the transcription, in fact, on our website. So it will be up there later this coming week on our website, which is just Yiddishkayt.org. Also a good place to go if you're interested in supporting future programs like this in the future. You can head over to Yiddishkayt.org and support us and see all the work that we've been doing up till now. I'd also just like to quickly thank everybody behind the scenes.
Yes, absolutely.
Claire Fester, Lisa Grissom, thank you both so much for all your work behind the scenes and the whole Yiddishkayt team here. And thank you, Aaron, and thank you so much, Frank, for all of the work that you both do and for being with us this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Thank you.